The mailman didn't just deliver letters. He knew their contents before he ever touched the envelopes. It wasn't intuition or guesswork. He would whisper details about family secrets, medical diagnoses, even impending deaths. The first time Sarah noticed, she smelled ozone in the air, that sharp electric scent before a storm. Her skin prickled as he handed her a letter and murmured, "I'm sorry about your mother's test results. 3 days before the hospital call." Then came the damp, earthy smell that clung to him, like freshly turned soil in a graveyard. The neighborhood's whispered theories about clairvoyance or psychic ability dissolved when they heard the scratching at night. Not scratching from animals or trees, but the distinct sound of fingernails dragging against paper inside sealed envelopes. And that's when Sarah realized the mailman wasn't predicting the future. The letters were telling him their secrets. He knew with unsettling certainty. He'd informed Mrs. Henderson her son's marriage was ended 3 days before the official notice arrived. He'd cautioned old Mr. Jenkins about the loose step, moments before the man's foot would have found empty air. These weren't guesses. They were cold, intrusive facts that settled in his mind like stones in a pocket. The knowledge came with a scent sharp ozone after a storm, and a profound, gnawing dread he could not shake. He sensed the fraudulent check's deceit before it even flew. We dismissed his uncanny intuition as mere coincidence. The air in the room grew thick with the scent of ozone and old paper. A primal dread, cold and sticky, began to coil in our stomachs. A child's drawing of a clock with no hands. We were wrong. It wasn't just him. It was all of us. In Oakwood, Pennsylvania, we don't dream of the past. We dream of tomorrow. And now, we're dreaming of the same thing. A Tuesday in October. And on that Tuesday, every single person in this town disappears. This is Oakwood, a picture of perfect, small-town America, preserved like a postcard. But beneath this idyllic surface, quiet dread has taken root. For the people here don't just remember the past. They are haunted by memories of things that have not yet happened. Population 2. 117th, a town where the 4th of July pie-eating contest remains an annual tradition, and everyone knows your grandmother's secret potato salad recipe. Our story centers on 3 residents, beginning with John, the mailman. For 30 years, the human bulletin board stood as a fixture in our town. Sarah, our sharp-eyed librarian, moved through the stacks with practiced efficiency. The air in the library held the scent of aged paper and forgotten stories. It was a quiet place, where whispers of the past seemed to cling to every shelf. She thrived on facts and order, needing everything cataloged and shelved. Mike, however, was a restless teenage boy, endlessly skateboarding outside the high school, convinced his life hadn't truly begun. He believed nothing of interest ever happened in this quiet town. They were all about to be proven terribly, terrifyingly wrong. It began subtly, a whisper network of strange coincidences. John's hunches became town legend, each one carrying the scent of ozone and the weight of dread. The air grew heavy with each whispered tale, sticky with fear that clung like damp rock. At the library, Sarah began reshelving books before patrons even requested them. She'd set a guide to Italy on the counter, and 5 minutes later, old Mrs. Rossi would walk in. Her daughter had just surprised her with tickets to Rome. Meanwhile, Mike started acing tests on material he swore he'd never studied, the knowledge appearing in his mind like a sudden, unwelcome guest. The air in both places carried the faint, metallic scent of ozone, as if reality itself had been briefly torn. He'd awaken with answers already formed in his mind, like recollections from a class he'd never attended. The gift wasn't a blessing at all. People gathered on street corners in hushed clusters, their conversations barely audible whispers that carried on the heavy air. A metallic scent hung in the damp atmosphere, and the distant sound of dripping water echoed through the empty alleyways. It was a contagion, and it was spreading. The town mechanic knew what part would fail on your car next week. He could smell the rust and burnt rubber before you even heard the knock. The baker, Mrs. Henderson, knew what you craved before the hunger even took root. Lowell began baking extra lemon cakes every Friday, the precise day the town would develop a sudden, collective craving for them after each minor earthquake tremor. Then came the journals. Sarah, the town librarian, found herself surrounded by notebooks in her dimly lit home, her face etched with exhaustion and a creeping dread. The scent of old paper and dust hung thick in the air, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of fear. She realized she needed to systemize it, to make sense of the patterns that were tightening like a noose around the town. She began a journal, but she wasn't alone in Oakwood. Dozens of others were secretly recording their memory dreams, fragments of tomorrow, glimpses of next week. They captured snippets of conversations not yet spoken, overheard at places like the gas station. Each entry carried the damp, metallic scent of premonition, a sticky dread clinging to every word. The final score of a football game, the precise moment a power line would snap on Elm Street. The true horror emerged when they compared notes. The basement library meeting felt thick with the scent of old paper and ozone. John, Sarah, Mike, and a few other townspeople gathered around the table, their journals laid open before them. Their faces were drained of color, eyes wide with a shared, unspoken horror. The details in their separate accounts aligned with an impossible, chilling precision. A heavy, metallic scent hung in the air as the truth settled upon them. undeniable and terrifying. They weren't merely predicting the future. They were remembering. Time in Oakwood felt like a scratched record, skipping ahead to play a fragment of what was to come before the needle dragged back to the present. The air grew thick with the metallic scent of ozone, a taste of temporal dislocation. It was within that heavy, charged silence that they discovered the shared dream. October 17th, and the town square stood empty, captured in frantic, sketch-like drawings. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and decay, as if the town itself was holding its breath. And it all started with Mike. The town square lay deserted, a nightmare made real. Dry leaves scraped across stone, the only sound in the oppressive quiet. Every shop stood dark, their windows like vacant eyes staring back at him. He had drawn this exact scene, and now the dread of its silence was his to bear. First, John dreamed it, then Sarah. Soon after, the mechanic, the baker, the schoolteacher, all saw the same vision behind closed eyes. The shared nightmare spread like a contagion, seeping into the town's subconscious. By last Tuesday, the count surpassed 300 confirmed cases, each mind touched by the same impossible dream. October 17th, a date seared into their minds. A Tuesday none have experienced, yet they remember with unnerving precision. The same fragmented dream visits each, a shared premonition of a day that hasn't dawned. It's a memory of the future, detailed and visceral, carrying the scent of ozone and cold, damp earth. And with each waking, the dread solidifies. They are haunted by a day that is still to come. Present day, October 16th. The town is gripped by a silent, creeping panic. Families move in frantic, hushed motions, stuffing belongings into vehicles. The air carries the faint, metallic tang of ozone and a deeper, earthy scent of damp soil. It's not the noise of flight, but the quiet, desperate scramble of a community preparing to vanish. Residents sat motionless on their porches, their gazes fixed and vacant. A military checkpoint stood at the town's edge, its purpose clear: containment, not protection. News crews were held back at a perimeter, their camera lenses capturing only the faint outline of the silent community. The outside world dismissed it as mass hysteria, a psychological anomaly they could not comprehend. When the CDC and psychologists arrived, they descended upon the town like forensic investigators at a crime scene. They collected samples, conducted interviews, and analyzed every possible vector. They found no virus, no toxin, no pathogen of any kind. Just a town where every resident now shared the same terrifying certainty. John, Sarah, and Mike gathered at Sarah's house, which had become their de facto headquarters against the unknown. They'd surrendered all hope of escape. The roads were sealed, the world having quarantined their prophecy in isolation. Sarah stared at her journal, her voice hollow and detached. It's not a memory of an event. A metallic scent, like ozone before a storm, clung to the air. The cold seeped through the floorboards, a damp chill that settled in the bones. From somewhere deep in the walls came a faint, persistent scratching, not animal, but deliberate. It was the sound of something patient, something waiting. Sarah didn't look up from the page. Her breath hitched, a sharp, quiet sound in the heavy stillness. The words in her journal weren't a record of the past. They were an omen, written in a hand that wasn't hers. It's a memory of absence, a void where sound should be. I remember that silence. It wasn't quiet, it was a pressure. It became the loudest thing I've ever heard, a roar of nothingness that filled my skull. So what? We just sit here, waiting to unexist? I remember tomorrow, and in that memory, I'm not anywhere. John stares out the window, his voice hollow. My wife, she started dreaming it last night. She described the way the flag at the post office hangs limp, utterly lifeless, exactly as I see it. We're all syncing up.
The clock's hand snapped to 11:59 p.m. on October 16th. A metallic tang, like ozone, stung the air. They sat frozen, breath held, hands locked in a silent, desperate pact. Not out of affection, but as an anchor, a way to prove they're here, now. As the clock ticks towards midnight, the entire town of Oakwood holds its breath. They are prisoners of a tomorrow they have already witnessed in their minds.
This is the peak of human terror. Not fear of the unknown, but the dread of the known. The clock strikes 12, October 17th. The screen went completely silent for a full 5 seconds. Then, a slow, rising drone of sound began to build, thick and oppressive. Narrator. It's Tuesday. Morning light finally streamed into Sarah's living room, revealing the aftermath. John, Sarah, and Mike remained frozen on the couch, their minds struggling to process the sudden shift in reality. A metallic scent lingered in the air as they exchanged bewildered glances, then scrambled toward the window. Their breath fogged the cold glass as they peered outside, expecting the impossible. But the street lay utterly ordinary. A single car driving past under the amber glow of streetlights. Mrs. Lowell was unlocking the bakery door, the morning still and quiet. Suddenly, a dog barked sharply from somewhere down the street, breaking the calm. Mike's voice came out, a mix of confusion and dawning relief. Nothing happened. We're here. The dream had been wrong. Her relief curdled into something else as she stared. Look closer. The man behind the wheel. It's Mr. Peters, who suffered a stroke last year, hasn't driven since that day. Across the room, Mrs. Lowell is arranging a tray of freshly baked blueberry muffins. The sweet, fruity aroma fills the kitchen, but there's a wrongness to it. She hasn't made blueberry in years because her husband is deathly allergic. The barking was unmistakable. Old Rusty, the Henderson's dog, who'd been buried 3 months prior. John's voice hollowed with a terrible realization. This isn't our town. Sarah slowly turned back toward her living room, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and ozone, her gaze fixed on her journal, open on the table. The page for October 17th was no longer blank. The writing appeared on the wall, in her own unmistakable hand. The disaster they recalled wasn't their disappearance, but their replacement. A creeping sense of ozone and damp concrete filled the air. This memory of the future wasn't a preview. It was an omen. It wasn't a memory at all, but a recording from a parallel timeline. An Oakwood that had already vanished. That signal, a bleed-through from a dead reality, had somehow imprinted itself directly into their minds. The air tasted of ozone and cold static, and a deep, resonant hum vibrated in their bones. They weren't remembering the future. They were haunted by a ghost of a world that never was. The town's past was seeping into their present, overwriting their memories piece by piece. Sarah opened the leather-bound journal, its pages smelling of old paper and faint, forgotten perfume. Her breath caught as she recognized her own precise script, words she knew with absolute certainty she had not yet written. She looked out the window at the deceptively normal town, a wave of primal dread washing over her as the full horror settled in her bones. The camera closes in on her pupils, glassy and unfocused. The air thickens with the scent of damp earth and ozone. A cold, sticky dread clinging to the skin. A low, rhythmic scratching seeps from the walls. A sound felt more than heard. Narrator. So the question isn't what happened to the Oakwood they dreamed of. The question is, which Oakwood are they living in now? And when this Tuesday ends, which memories will be left? A single, warped church bell tolled in the distance, its resonance twisting unnaturally before snapping into abrupt silence. The sudden void of sound felt heavier than the noise itself, pressing down like a physical weight. The air turned thick with the metallic scent of old rain and damp stone. Then, nothing, not even the whisper of the wind, dared to fill the void it left behind.